Where am I looking at here?
Coach, you're looking at me, and we're live on the air right now. Coach Urban Meyer, he's getting located. He's there. He's awake. He's got his coffee. Urban, great to see you on week four of the best Fridays in football. Wow.
Yeah, good to be with you. A lot of going on this week, man.
A lot of stuff. I want to get down, breaking down some games. We didn't have very many good games last week, but I know you had some thoughts on the schedule. But before we do that, I hate to make this the Deion Sanders hour every week because we talk about it a lot. But right now, as Woody Page, my friend, said last night, he's the best college story in college football, Urban, and you've been on top of it from early on. You went down and spoke to the team. One more time, for those people who don't like Deion, I'm sorry, he is the story right now. Urban, what is going on with this guy? He seems to be making a lot of progress and impacting a lot of people.
Yeah, I've known Deion Sanders a long time. Ironically, we did a commercial when I first got hired in Florida. I brought my daughter out there to Los Angeles, and it was, I believe, a Nike commercial, and you had Michael Vick, Prime, you had Urlacher, and it was really, really kind of interesting. And Deion and I stayed friends, and he helped us recruit and wanted us to look at players, and he just is a genuine guy, and so he gets hired at Jackson State, and everybody's kind of watching. I'm watching, and he starts dominating down there, and then there's a lot of skepticism. And he gets hired at CU and does unprecedented things. He remakes a roster. He just takes a team that was 111, and he says the fire coaches and he puts a lot on the players, which is really unusual. He said you guys are responsible for this too. Get out. And got some new guys in there, and a lot of guys quit. They made some changes. I read that, or I heard his commentary on that. So he rebuilt the roster. I wanted to go see it. I wanted to see his coaches, and I've been around this game a long time. I wanted to get it because we had Fox was going to cover him the first 2 weeks. So I watched him practice. One of the best college football practices I've ever seen.
Really?
He's hired an incredible staff. He's got really good players. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And there's a lot of substance behind what he does. Once you get by the sunglasses, the gold chains, the Coach Prime golf cart, he's a really good coach, a great coach. He has a unique way of reaching those players, and it's on display every week. You always try to create adversity within your program. They had it last week. They're down by 8 points with 2 minutes left, and they're on their own 2 yard line to go try to tie a game, and they do it. So hats off to them. But the next 2 weeks, buddy, we're going to find out. We're going to do this every week, and we'll find out because they're going to Oregon and then USC.
Well, it is amazing what's happened. It looks like trouble's ahead, but a lot of people feel like he's a much needed voice in football right now and a refreshing personality and not the glitz and glamour guy that some of us thought he was. That he has more substance to him in terms of his approach to handling players, his depth, his spirituality, even. He has something going on. A lot of people say you don't know Deion, the real Deion. He's the guy behind all that. So good luck to him. I love the story right now, and he's a very good one. Um, Speaking of stories, Florida Gators kind of brought it back last week, Coach, and
Ooh.
big win. I just wrote a column about this kind of thing resonated with a lot of old Gators who were breathing easier today, Urban, because this thing looked at like it could go sideways, and now suddenly it's not Sun Belt Billy, it's SEC Billy, isn't it?
Yeah, it can go sideways real fast. And that was a must win. That was a win that he had to have, and his team was prepared. They played well. The swamp lit up. By the way, I love the new Tom Petty. They didn't do that when I was there. What incredible
Oh, LED lights, LED lights. Wow, huh?
and they played really well. I mean, so I compared it to when I was at Florida our first year. We're kind of bouncing around and not playing well. We lost to South Carolina. I think we were 7-2 at the time, and Bobby Bowden brought a highly ranked team into the swamp, and we beat them 34-7, and that was it. After that, I think I took at least 10 commitments in the locker room that night. The swamp exploded, and we won a national championship the
Hmm.
next year. So, uh, congratulations to him and his staff. I sent him a text and enjoy that for a moment, but get on to the next because right now You think about that top recruiting class. He has a great recruiting class committed, not signed yet. I don't know if he keeps those guys if they would have lost that game. But now Florida's
Yeah,
back to being the talk of, that was a huge win, and he did a great job. His staff did a great job.
great pointer. When there were people who were money people, you know how they go, who were actually talking about if they don't play better than this after Utah, I'm not giving them any NIL money. That's a whole new deal you didn't have to deal with. If this starts happening, your program can go south in a hurry, right?
Yeah, can you imagine that? I mean, that
No, I
just
can't.
that bothers me. That first, that's not right. And I don't. I've said it a million times. I think players' name and likeness is fantastic, but using money for recruiting and I don't. I'm glad I'm not in that.
Yeah, you should be glad. You're in a good place right now. Speaking of which, you guys look like you're having fun. It looks like a good crew with Ingram being joining the group. Moving about from week to week now, it's different than what you did last year, I guess, or at least 2 years ago. How's that going when you're on the scene? I know you. You like to feel it and get the juices pumping. What's it like to be there at the game?
Oh, it's great. Obviously it's like we're their Coach Prime network the first several
Mm.
weeks. Last week was Little Wayne, and they asked me my favorite Little Wayne song, and
You knew a Little Wayne song? Come on, man. Come on.
I don't have any idea, but it was great. The crowd was phenomenal. They got there at 5 a.m. We had Gronkowski with us, and it
Yeah.
was an incredible show, incredible moment. Yeah, I love our group. We Mark Ingram's done great, and these guys have become like brothers to me, and we're a family, and we travel around, hang out together, have a ball, and talk football.
Can't beat that. Let's look at this weekend slate. What jumps out at you? Certainly, FSU Clemson has to be one of them. What games are you looking at that you think are going to be significant? There's several. Which one do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got Ohio State, Notre Dame. That's an
Yeah.
obvious. I coached at Notre Dame for 6 years, and then I coached at Ohio State, obviously, and this is a two blue bloods swinging at each other, two sledgehammers going at it. Notre Dame is a very traditional. I just really studied. I'm going to do something on TV about it. Very traditional offense, but they're really good on defense. And I think the game's going to come down to the D coordinator at at Notre Dame and his decision. Its name's Al Golden. If he will go after the quarterback, which is a young quarterback in Ohio State, Kyle McCord, if they go after him, they could fluster him a little bit because they're really good on defense. But they have the two best receivers or two top draft picks at receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Abuka. If if they get in space, I don't know if Notre Dame can tackle. So it's going to be. I am so intrigued to watch the decision by the defense coordinator at Notre Dame. Utah UCLA is a huge game.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch that one. And then obviously, like you said, has the power shifted in the ACC? Is Florida State back to being the Florida State of old?
Mm-hmm. And in fact, are the big three back in the state of Florida, Urban? When Florida State, Florida, and Miami are playing well, it's good for college football, not just Florida. So little surprises there from Miami playing better, and certainly FSU's on a roll, and now Florida's back. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
It would. I mean, just think when we were, both of us 20 years ago, that was the epicenter of college football. You had Miami, Florida, Florida State. One of the three are going to win a national championship. They're always right there. All the NFL players there. That's the way it should be. What are we talking about? Those three schools should be top 10 every year.
Yeah, for sure. Any thoughts in week, what is this, 4, about the landscape of college football? We see the SEC is struggling a little bit. Might not get two teams in this year. Um,
Well, there's no chance. There's two
no,
teams in.
right, right.
It's unprecedented right now. I have them as the third best conference in the country. Alabama
Wow,
is,
third best. Wow.
and I don't think it's close. I watched those film of those teams, and Alabama. It's more than just a quarterback problem. Great coach, great staff, great players. So there's a lot of football left. I imagine that once they get this thing right, they'll get going. But I watched that game closely. That was the South Florida game last week. Tennessee did not look very good with a new quarterback. Uh, the one team that I really like is LSU. They got hammered pretty good by Florida State, but
It sure
they've
did.
rebounded. You talk about excellent players, and then Georgia obviously has excellent players. So right now, I think the Big Ten, you have the top three that are all potential playoff teams. That's Ohio State, the Wolverines, and Penn State. The deepest conference right now, which is going away, is the Pac-12.
It's
They have the
amazing.
best quarterbacks in the country. They have 7 guys out there that can play anywhere, and that's a very deep conference. And then you got SEC, ACC, so and the Big 12. So it's going to be. I know there's a lot of football left, but the SEC is going to have to get going and get going fast.
I know you have your eye on Iowa, Penn State as two
Big
teams to
time.
watch. Yeah, and the battle of the unbeaten's there. I don't know. You say Penn State's really good. You like them, don't you?
It's the best team they've had in 15 years on paper. Talent-wise, they've recruited well. Their quarterback's a 5-star guy. He didn't play great last week, but I've seen him before, and I know this guy. He's Drew Aller. He's tremendous. They have 2 legit running backs. I think one of the best in the country, Nick Singleton, and they have the Wolverines at Penn State, and then they got to go to Ohio State. Basically, those 3 games to me are a play into the playoff.
Urban Meyer, three-time national championship coach, best Fridays in football. Something he gave the name of his Fridays when he coached at Florida. I guess. Before, did you have it before Florida? Or was that the first time you called it best Fridays in football?
No, we started that at Bowling Green, so
Bowling
that
Green.
carried with it.
Okay.
I learned that from Sonny Lubick, the head coach
Ah,
of Colorado State. I
yeah,
wanted to make sure that Fridays were because we worked so hard. Our practice was
yeah.
legendary. Tuesday was they call them bloody Tuesdays and get
Mm-hmm.
right Wednesday, and it was a tough week, and I wanted to make sure Friday that was their chance to get rest, get their bodies right, get their minds right. And Sonny Lubick used to always tell me the most important thing on a Friday is get rest. And so we turned it into our players loved it. We did some really cool things on Fridays as we geared up for the game.
Yeah, I wonder if you can coach that hard, Urban, today.
Oh, I
With
think so.
all,
I know Deion Sanders is. I went and watched
yeah,
him in practice, and
yeah.
I would imagine you can. I've been to some practices, and honestly, I walked away shaking my head a few times, like, what was that? That wasn't. That's not practice. That's whatever it was. But I walked away from Colorado saying that is one of the best, toughest, physical, demanding practices, which is obviously what we believed in.
Wouldn't expect that at Colorado. Well, all right, speaking of which, do people teach fundamentals as much, Urban, as they did when you were coaching?
Oh, I believe so. At times you watch videotape, and we can all be critical, and that's our jobs now. As analysts to watch those things closely, and you shake your head sometimes, but then you watch some of these teams play, and you're darn right they do. So I hope they do. I'm sure they do. Uh, you know, I think it's you can look back years ago. Some teams did, some teams didn't. The ones that win usually do.
Is it still blocking and tackling?
Oh yeah. That never goes away. It's going to look different. It's going to sound different. You're going to hear things like NIL and who's driving what car and who's getting what money for recruiting and will the boosters pay this player, which kind of doesn't sound right. But at the end of the day, the team that blocks, tackles, and takes care of the football is going to win.
Let's talk about. We talked about Billy Napier having a big week last week and a win. I don't like to say must win, but that had deep meaning to it. A lot of Gators were
No,
really.
buddy, that was a must win.
It was a
That
must
was a
win.
must
Yeah,
win. That
yeah.
was a must win because college football has always been about momentum, and obviously they struggled last year. But what's appealing to me about Napier is that he's recruiting so well, and he's is very methodical about what he does. And I kept hearing about it. The methodical piece is going to not make it if he loses this one and a couple others. But I mean, all credit to him and his staff, man. They flipped it. But you think everybody's had that. Every coach that has gone through the ups and downs of every coach. I don't care where you're at. There's been those there's turning moments. Nick Saban had a very bad year his first year, and they flipped it. I told you the story of us at Florida. We flipped it that Florida State game. There's great storylines, and then there's storylines where it doesn't flip and staffs get removed. But there's no doubt that was a must win, and they answered the bell.
You had that great tarmac meeting after a loss and stayed on the runway for about an hour and a half and had it out. And Vernell Brown emerged as a leader in that group, and he was. Talk about that night and what you did, and you put it all on the line. You basically just said, get off the plane if you don't want to do this. What happened?
Yeah, we lost to the visor to Coach Spurrier, and that was one of the low lifes of my, because obviously he's the chosen one at the University of Florida, and I get it, he should be. I'm very good friends with him. I love the guy, and we lose the game on the way home, and I was dealing with nonstop stuff that year, and as the plane's flying, everyone's hearts ripped out, but there's a handful of players that were laughing on the plane, and that did it. And it's not fair to everyone if you're not putting your whole heart and soul into it. If you could have laughed after that loss, you certainly don't belong at the University of Florida. And we made some changes. 2 players were removed from the team immediately, and I made it clear that there's everyone's welcome. I'll help sign the papers right now if you want to leave, but this is not going to. We will not tolerate this. Either you're in or it's decision time. You're either in or you're out. And then, you know what happened? We had a bye week, and then we beat Florida State 34-7. So people made the decision to jump in, and you win it. A year later, you're in the national championship game.
Well, players know who's given everything. I'm going to use a poor example of a personal story of mine when I was a high school quarterback, and I spent a lot of time all summer running, kicking the ball myself, going to get it, throwing passes through tires, and to get myself in condition. I worked extremely hard to do that. I wanted to play college football, wasn't good enough. But come my first big game, when my dad saw me play for the first time against the number 4 team of the state, at halftime, my teammates were puking and cramping and whatever. I thought, these guys are not in shape. They didn't get it done, and it really made me angry. We lost the game, and that night it just really set me off. Fortunately, I acted out on it and shouldn't have. But the fact is that players know when players aren't given everything, Coach, don't they?
They sure do, and it's not fair. And that's something that I remember as a kid growing up as well. And I always promised myself the ones that are completely committed, it's not fair to them. And that's still to this day when I witness that, even though I'm not coaching, I watch it and I can see it. You can see it from a mile away. But you can also see the ones that are, can't give any more to a program. And they deserve to have the others around them hold up their end of the bargain.
Your dad taught you a lot about work ethic. He was pretty tough on you. I remember you had to run home for some games, things of that nature. Talk about Bud for a second and the value that you got from that. He coached you hard, I mean.
He did. He had a high. It wasn't just me. I had 2 sisters, and academics were always number 1 in our family. And then, if it was sports, it was sports, or if it was music, or if it was whatever you're interested in. He would always ask. He'd say, "This is a simple question with a complicated answer," and he would say, "Are you the hardest working person on your team, in your class? And if you are, keep going. If you're not, we have to have a little conversation to know why. I don't care how fast you are, how tall you are." How strong you are, but I do care about your work ethic. And that couldn't have been more clear. I used that for 30 years in my career as well with players and with coaches, with support staff. Once again, your ACT score doesn't really mean a lot to me, but are you the hardest working person out there? And if you are, great, let's keep moving. If not, let's have a conversation and find out why. Because once you find out the why, you can fix those things. If you never find out the why, then that person is going to go on and struggle.
Good point. Did he really name you after the Pope, Urban?
No, I'm the 3rd one in the family. That's his name too.
I didn't know that. Bud's name was Urban? Wow.
Yeah, my grandfather was as well, so I was the 3rd one.
My goodness. Wow. Okay, interesting. Let's talk about what could be ahead for Florida. After the win over Tennessee, it's almost transformational, and it feels like things are starting to happen in a good way that I've sensed I haven't seen before. And I talked last week about Coach Spurrier describing the Clemson win he had, how it really catapulted him into the Florida job. So what's a variable here? I see now 7, 8 wins to this team if you cherry pick the ones, and he's got a chance against everybody, including Georgia. Now, how realistic is this? And he said last week we can play better, which is what I wanted to hear. We can play better. He's pushing the envelope. So this is a guy who I like to say measures twice and cuts once, and tries to get the foundation built. Maybe he's got a foundation here. How does he go forward?
Yeah, this is one game, so he's going to be judged again next Saturday at probably 5 o'clock or whenever the game's over or that evening. So it's a week to week, especially in that conference. So, I went. That was a big win, monumental win. That was a game changer, program changer for the team. But if they stumble and fall, 2 or 3 more times, then you kind of forget about that win. So they cleared that hurdle, but buddy, I would not even go as far as it's all about the next game and keeping your players healthy and finding ways to win. So I pumped the brakes on trying to guess the win loss at the end of the season. All I know is they beat a rival. They beat Tennessee. I think that's his first win over a rival, which
Yeah, it is.
You've been to Florida a long time. I was there for a while. That doesn't fly. We lost. I think. Well, we lose one rival game, two. We lost 2 rival games in our time.
16-2, you were in Florida on rivals.
Yeah, I count Miami, so I gave it
Okay.
17.
Okay, that works. Yeah,
because Miami is one of those rivals too, but you just don't play
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So it's onward to the next. And can he beat Georgia? Of course he can. You're at Florida. The minute someone says that Florida doesn't have good players, shame on what are you talking about? How do you have not good players at Florida? Maybe they're not coached. Maybe there are stuff going on. Maybe there's behind the scenes issues. But when I hear someone say Florida doesn't have good players, they're wrong. They just beat Tennessee soundly. So can they compete with Georgia? Of course they can.
Yeah, this is one thing Coach Spurrier taught us about that, and you did too as well. And we'll run. All right, so looking ahead now, who are your final 4 teams? This is last year we got 4. Next year we got 12. Who are your final 4 teams?
Yeah, I'm not really supposed to do that because I'm with Fox. And
Okay, but I will ask you that.
So
Give
the
me
one team
yeah.
the one team that I do see that's going to be standing near the end is going to be Texas. I am all in on Texas right now. And
You really are on Sark, and you like and he had an impressive win last week. Why do you think they can sustain talent?
I think talent and I think their coaching staff is good. I've watched them over the years. I think they struggled, and at some point Texas it's gonna happen. It's too good of a place. There's too many good players, too much resources, spectacular city. So they're gonna win. So and that big win over at Alabama was phenomenal. So I have Texas. They have 5-star athletes at every position on offense. Their front 7 on defense just dominated Alabama. So I the Big Ten, one of those 3. And then I think Florida State's one to keep an eye on as well.
What kind of a job has Mike Norvell done down there?
I'm sorry?
What kind of a job has Mike Norvell done at Florida State, in your opinion?
Well, you think 3 years ago that was one of the worst programs. I was shocked when I watched Florida State a couple years ago, how bad they were. They looked like just a very below average